marriage proposals arrived on the same day, one from a poor scholar, the other from a marquis's mansion. My elder cousin, the legitimate daughter of the family, snatched the shabby silver hairpin from the scholar's hand and pressed it against her neck, vowing to die rather than marry into the noble marquis's household. The entire family rushed to dissuade her, but only I knew the truth. She had been reborn. This life, the title of #1 scholar's wife, is mine, she sneered triumphantly. You can go rot in the marquis's mansion as a widow. I pressed my lips together in silence. It was my turn to escape poverty and enjoy a life of ease. Father had arranged 2 marriage prospects for my cousin and me. One was the young general of the loyal and brave marquis's mansion, the other his destitute but promising protégé. Father, I choose Master Zhao, my cousin declared without hesitation, the moment she snatched the silver hairpin from Zhao Shusheng's hand. I knew she too had been reborn. The hairpin was tarnished to a dull blackish brown. Back in our previous life, she wouldn't have spared it a single glance. Father froze for a moment, shot me a quick look, then spoke up gently. You are the legitimate daughter of this family, by rights. You ought to marry into the marquis's mansion. The Zhao family is poor and humble. It would be more fitting to decline their proposal politely. I bowed my head, suppressing the smile tugging at my lips, and watched indifferently as father launched into his earnest persuasion. Irritated by his rambling, my cousin tightened her grip on the shabby hairpin, pressing it harder against her throat, and swore she would marry no one but Zhao Shusheng. With that, further argument was futile. Stacks of dowry gifts were prepared in the backyard, under the pretense of the Zhao family's poverty. Most of the valuables were allocated to my cousin. I didn't care in the slightest. The more lavish the dowry, the more recklessly the Zhao family would squander it. I wondered idly if those dozens of sedan loads of gifts would ever be enough to satisfy the greed in people's hearts. The marriages were thus finalized. The jade pendant inlaid with colored glaze from the loyal and brave marquis's mansion ended up in my hands. In my previous life, I had never laid eyes on this so-called brother-in-law of mine. I only heard that Shen Siji, the young general, had rushed off to war on his wedding night. He fought for months on end, and when he finally returned, half his face was disfigured by burns, and one of his legs was crippled. Though he retained the title of loyal and brave general in name, all real power had long been stripped from his grasp. My cousin had always been arrogant and domineering. Being forced to wait on a half-crippled day in and day out filled her with growing resentment. If Shen Siji had simply died in battle, it would have been better. After 3 years of widowhood, she could have returned to her maiden home, but this endless limbo, neither dead nor alive, wore away all her patience. She cried, she threw tantrums, she even acted like a shrew. But father, fearing public criticism and the sneers of his court colleagues, forbade her from divorcing her husband. As she watched Zhao Shusheng pass the imperial examinations with flying colors, his future shining bright and boundless, her bitterness finally boiled over onto me. She rushed to the #1 scholar's mansion like a madwoman, hair disheveled, wielding a kitchen knife and slashing wildly. I am the legitimate daughter of this family, she shrieked. I should be the #1 scholar's wife. I died a violent death under her blade. She threw back her head and laughed wildly, then chose to hang herself in the end. Reborn, she had jumped at the chance to marry into the Zhao family without a second thought. I had warned her that Zhao Shusheng was no good. But her refusal to listen came as no surprise. The 6th day of the 6th lunar month, the wedding date my cousin had painstakingly chosen, she knew full well that this was the day Shen Siji would be called away to war at a moment's notice. I was carried in a palanquin to the loyal and brave marquis's mansion. No sooner had I finished the wedding kowtows than I heard the urgent clatter of horse hooves outside. The old woman supporting me remained unflustered, quickly helping me to my feet and leading me to the bridal chamber. A moment later, A pair of black boots embroidered with golden thread appeared before me. Shinseiji was in a great hurry, but he deliberately slowed down as he reached out to lift my red bridal veil, his touch surprisingly gentle. "I apologize, my lady," he said. "Rebels are stirring in the northwest. I must depart at once." His red wedding robes had already been replaced with a suit of armor. A long sword hung at his waist. His inky black hair tied up high, and his chiseled features set in a stern, unyielding line. I had only ever heard him described as the ghost-faced general after his disfigurement in our previous life. I had never imagined he was so handsome. I froze for a moment, then turned and fetched a silk handkerchief from the table. "Your military duties take precedence, General. You need not worry about me, but since you must leave in such haste, please take these pastries to tide you over on the road." I wrapped the pastries from the table in the handkerchief and handed them to him carefully. Our fingers brushed lightly, and I felt him tremble slightly. "I have wronged you," he murmured. I shook my head, intending to say no more, but as I watched him tuck the handkerchief of pastries into his arms, I couldn't help but mention a name. "Is Captain Senta Yuan accompanying you on this campaign?" "General, yes," he replied. "Why do you ask?" The army was assembling outside, and the sound of reports echoed constantly, but Shinseiji did not urge me to speak quickly. I made up a casual excuse, saying that Senta Yuan had abandoned his wife and was lacking in moral character, advising him to be cautious in his dealings with the man. I spoke only a few words, and I did not know if Shinseiji had paid them any heed after all. Much of what I said was merely conjecture. In our previous life, the Shin family army had crushed the Northwest rebels with overwhelming force, driving the enemy back 100 miles and restoring lasting peace to the people. But Shinseiji had suffered a devastating blow in the process. After receiving his imperial reward, he had grown increasingly withdrawn and despondent. Meanwhile, Senta Yuan had risen steadily through the ranks, climbing all the way to the position of Supreme Commander of the Imperial Army. There was undoubtedly more to his meteoric rise than met the eye. After a long silence, Shinseiji lifted his hand and plucked the plainest, most unremarkable hairpin from my hair, tucking it into his palm. "Wait for me to come back." The loyal and brave Marquis's family had a long history of loyal service to the throne. The old Marquis and the heir to the Marquisate had been stationed at the border all year round. Shinseiji, the second son, had followed them to the battlefield at the tender age of 13. My mother-in-law, a woman of uncommon fortitude, had never uttered a single word of complaint on his behalf, declaring firmly that a true man should set his sights on the wider world. Having been given a second chance at life, I had no intention of wasting it. I was still pondering what I should do with my time when my mother-in-law sent for me. "Wanyan," she said, placing a set of account books in front of me. "These are the household ledgers. From today onward, the management of the mansion's affairs is yours to oversee." I was stunned, instinctively refusing the responsibility. My mother-in-law was still alive and well, and my sister-in-law also resided in the mansion. By all rights, the running of the household should never have fallen to me. "Do not be alarmed," she reassured me with a warm smile. "This decision was made in consultation with your elder sister-in-law." I was even more confused. My elder sister-in-law was the daughter of a wealthy merchant family. Half the shops in the capital belonged to her maternal relatives, making her family incredibly rich. Surely, in terms of both family background and seniority, she was far more suited to managing the household than I was. "Your elder sister-in-law is occupied with managing our family's farms and shops outside the city. She simply does not have the time to spare for the mansion's internal affairs," my mother-in-law explained patiently. "Besides, this was Seiji's wish. He sent a special messenger to convey his instructions to me yesterday." My heart skipped a beat. Shinseiji had left for the front lines immediately after bidding me farewell yesterday. I had never imagined that, in his haste, he would still take the time to arrange for me to be put in charge of the household? Was it because he was afraid I would lose face, being left alone on my wedding night while my husband marched off to war? Regardless of the reason, I would inevitably become the subject of gossip among the noble ladies of the capital. In our previous life, it was precisely this humiliation that had caused my cousin to grow increasingly resentful of the Marquis's mansion. But in my previous life, the management of the household had remained firmly in my mother-in-law's hands. Mother, I truly do not have the ability to manage such a large and important household, I said earnestly. I was a concubine-born daughter. My birth mother had died giving birth to me, raised under the care of my legal mother. I had been treated little better than a servant, with no one ever bothering to teach me the skills needed to run a noble household. What does that matter? My mother-in-law replied with a kind smile. I shall personally teach you everything you need to know, Wanyan. The loyal and brave Marquis's mansion is not like other aristocratic families. Here, women are allowed to carve out their own paths in life, live your life freely and unapologetically, and never let Cigi bully you. It was the first time in my life that anyone had placed such high hopes in me. Naturally, I resolved to do my utmost to live up to her expectations. The atmosphere in the Marquis's mansion was refreshingly upright and honest. Free from the petty intrigues that plagued other noble families, neither the old Marquis nor my elder brother-in-law had ever taken concubines. They believed that a single lifelong companion was more than enough. The men defended the country and fought the enemy on the battlefield. The women managed the household and supported them from behind. It was a harmony I had never dared to imagine. My mother-in-law taught me the art of household management, while my elder sister-in-law instructed me in the use of the abacus and the keeping of accounts. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt truly accepted as one of the family. I couldn't help but wonder how my cousin could have ever been so dissatisfied with such a wonderful home. The world looks down on merchants, my elder sister-in-law said, flicking the abacus beads with a sharp click-clack as she finished calculating the final sum for the army's grain supplies. Then scrawled a signature and ordered the funds to be sent to the northern border. But they failed to realize that without merchants like us to keep the wheels of commerce turning, those smooth-tongued civil officials would never be able to ensure the prosperity and stability of the nation. Sister-in-law, I hesitated, then asked, you and elder brother-in-law? I had always been curious. No matter how wealthy a merchant family was, they were still considered beneath the notice of an illustrious family like the loyal and brave Marquises. I wanted him as a person, she said frankly, her voice ringing with honesty. He wanted my family's wealth. As luck would have it, we also happened to fall in love. It was a win-win situation for both of us. My elder sister-in-law was a woman of refreshing candor, and her straightforward words left me momentarily lost for reply. Wanyan, you live your life far too cautiously, she said, giving me a playful nudge. Don't let that carefree husband of yours walk all over you. I stared at her in confusion. From our brief encounter, Shinsiji had struck me as a man of integrity and solemnity. I couldn't understand why both my mother-in-law and elder sister-in-law thought he would bully me. On the day I returned to my maiden home for my first visit after marriage, my elder sister-in-law accompanied me personally. Carriages upon carriages were stuffed to the brim with silk fabrics, gold, silver, and jade jewelry, as if the treasures were worthless scraps of stone. Don't you worry about a thing, my elder sister-in-law said with a wave of her hand. Your sister-in-law here is so rich she doesn't know what to do with it all. Helping you save face is the least I can do. From a distance, I spotted my cousin standing at the gate of our family mansion, hanging on Zhao Shusheng's arm, craning her neck to look for us. But the moment she caught sight of the endless stream of lavish gifts trailing behind me, her pretty face darkened instantly. Look how far you've come, little sister, she said acidly as we approached. Even your return visit to your maiden home requires us to wait for ages. Have you no regard for the time? I ignored her taunts, bowing respectfully to my parents. A fish that keeps its mouth shut is the least likely to get hooked. I saw no point in engaging in petty squabbles with her. Must be dreadful, spending your days alone in an empty room, she sneered, falling into step beside me and whispering in a voice laced with malice, "Don't say your elder sister didn't warn you. The battlefield is a dangerous place. This is only the beginning. You'd better get used to this lonely, empty life of yours sooner rather than later." "What do you mean by that?" I demanded, coming to an abrupt halt, my cousin's face twisted into a triumphant smile. Her eyes brimming with undisguised pity. "They say the barbarians of the Northwest drink human blood to survive, each and every one of them fierce and battle-hardened. The second young master of the Shun family is nothing but a pampered nobleman, raised in luxury and comfort. I'm afraid he will be no match for them. A tragic end awaits him on the battlefield." "How dare you?" I snapped, cutting her off sharply. "What exactly are you implying by saying such things, elder sister? Our soldiers leave their homes and families behind, standing guard at the border day after day, year after year, all to protect the people and ensure their peace and stability. As a daughter of an aristocratic family, you not only fail to consider the welfare of the common people but also have the audacity to praise the enemy's ferocity and curse the commander of our army. What is the meaning of this?" My cousin's mouth fell open in shock. It was the first time anyone had ever dared to speak to her in such a manner, let alone me, the lowly concubine-born daughter she had always looked down on. For a moment, she was left completely speechless. "How dare you run wild? You little wretch, you really think you're somebody now? Who do you think you are to lecture Wanyue?" My legal mother raised her hand, ready to slap me across the face, but her wrist was roughly restrained by the attendant beside my elder sister-in-law, Madame Sue. "Watch your words. The little wretch you're referring to is none other than the second young mistress of our Marquis's mansion." In an instant, the atmosphere in the Sue mansion's courtyard turned tense, thick enough to cut with a knife. It was Zhao Shusheng who stepped forward to mediate, smoothing over my cousin's outrageous remarks with a few glib words, passing them off as the ramblings of someone overly concerned. I knew all too well how calculating and smooth-tongued this would-be top scholar really was. Watching him navigate the awkward situation between the three parties with effortless ease, my father's face lit up with delight in the blink of an eye. My legal mother's doting gaze flitted back and forth between my cousin and Zhao Shusheng, not forgetting to shoot me a couple of venomous glares in passing. "Little sister, your brother-in-law is truly a prodigy at his studies, and he treats me so well." My cousin preened. On our wedding night, he handed over the reins of managing the household to me. He even promised me that I would be his only wife, and he would take no other concubines after me. I nodded silently. In my past life, Zhao Shusheng had spun me the exact same honeyed lies. Only that household management authority would soon turn into a mountain of crushing debts, and as for taking no other concubines, tch, it was almost amusing to think about. The person he truly desired had long since been living under his roof. There was a saying circulating in the capital: Zhao Shusheng was as handsome as the legendary Pan and refined, gentle, and charming beyond compare. Orphaned at a young age, he had been raised by a widowed woman, grateful for her kindness. He had dedicated himself to his studies, determined to repay her nurturing grace with success. In my previous life, I had been captivated by his breathtaking looks, and touched by his apparent filial piety and benevolence. But now, as I watched Zhao Shusheng sitting side by side with my cousin in front of me, spouting well-timed flattering words, that same handsome face filled me with nothing but disgust, false, hypocritical, cloying, and insincere. Suddenly, my mind drifted to Shen Siji's chiseled, angular face. His was a different kind of handsomeness, sharp and imposing, yet steady and unshakable all the same. I had never been favored by my birth family. My legal mother and father had eyes only for my cousin, barely sparing me a single word. My elder sister-in-law sat off to the side, flipping through the list of wedding gifts with leisurely composure, deliberately making the paper rustle loudly with a crisp swish-swish. The sound drained my legal mother's enthusiasm for talking bit by bit, and she was practically glued to the gift list with her eyes. There are so many things here, this place can't possibly hold them all. My elder sister-in-law said abruptly, her eyes darting around the courtyard before she curled her lips into a disdainful sneer. Paying no heed to the stunned onlookers, she tore off a small piece of the gift list and handed it to the young servant standing behind her. Never mind, we'll just leave these things here. The duck that was already in her mouth had flown away. How could my legal mother possibly sit still? Earlier, she had been whispering away with my cousin in secret, presumably plotting how to squander my wedding return gifts. How dare you? The gift list hasn't been finalized, and none of these things have even entered the Sue mansion yet. Are you trying to rob us, Madam Sue? If my elder sister-in-law were merely the daughter of a merchant family, the Sue family would never have given her the time of day, but as the eldest young mistress of the loyal and brave Marquis's mansion, even my father had to show her the utmost respect. She had both wealth and powerful connections. She was someone no one in their right mind would dare to offend. Let's go. All this empty pretense is utterly tedious, my elder sister-in-law said, taking my hand and leading me away. On that day, I finally understood what she had meant when she said I was living my life too cautiously. The poor should not fight with the rich. Merchants should not fight with officials. My elder sister-in-law had both wealth and influence on her side. She had the unshakable confidence that came with real power. My cousin and the Sue family did not dare to provoke her, but that did not mean they would not take their frustrations out on me. In the months that followed, I heard that my cousin had been throwing herself into all sorts of social gatherings attended by noble ladies of the capital. She participated in poetry recitals, flower arranging competitions, tea-tasting events, and painting critiques, currying favor left and right, and building up her network of connections. She paraded her husband around like a trophy, boasting that he was the reincarnation of the god of literature, and chatting and laughing with everyone as if she were already the wife of the top scholar. I was in the middle of learning archery from the third young master of the Marquis's mansion when I heard about the vicious lies she had been spreading about me at those gatherings. Shun Sueji was only 9 years old, but he already carried himself with the poise and gravity of an adult. He had long ago sworn that he would follow in the footsteps of his father and elder brothers, shedding his blood and sacrificing his life to fight 100 battles on the battlefield, clad in shining armor. Second sister-in-law, is she really your elder sister? He asked, his young face twisted in confusion. After all, he was still a child, raised in a warm and harmonious family where brothers loved and respected each other. He knew nothing of the underhanded schemes and petty infighting that festered behind the closed doors of wealthy mansions. The things my cousin had said about me were truly vile. She claimed that when I lived at home, I was lazy and idle, had no interest in studying, and spent my days sneaking out to fool around with all sorts of disreputable people. Not only did I neglect my academic duties, but I was also extremely lax when it came to showing filial piety to our parents. She told her lies with such conviction and detail that she had successfully painted me as a spoiled, useless young lady who knew nothing but how to waste her days in pleasure. Whoosh! I released the bowstring, and the arrow flew straight and true, hitting the bullseye dead center. Shun Sueji let out a gasp of admiration. But he still muttered the same question under his breath. Second sister-in-law, you're obviously so hardworking. You learn everything so quickly. It's because you're a good teacher, I replied, reaching out to ruffle his hair, urging him not to pay any mind to the malicious gossip outside. Shun Sueji frowned. Still clearly confused, I smiled softly, telling him only that the time was not yet right. My elder sister-in-law took me with her wherever she went, no empty pleasantries. No meaningless small talk. She taught me how to build connections the honest way, through solid, genuine interactions, and she also helped me heap praise on my cousin at every turn, singing her praises as a paragon of virtue and scholarly dedication from all angles. I was so busy I barely had time to catch my breath, but my days were filled with a sense of purpose I had never known before. When I had a moment to spare, I would calculate the passing days in my head. I imagined that by now, my cousin must be fully immersed in her role as the virtuous and studious wife-to-be of the top scholar. Zhao Shuxing was indeed a talented man. Having grown up in adversity, he had clawed his way out of the poverty-stricken countryside all the way to the capital. But prosperity was a dangerous thing. It could easily turn a man's head and make him arrogant. In my previous life, after this poor scholar had married me, he had thought he was just one step away from ascending to the heavens. He had thrown himself into his studies with a feverish urgency, and the way he had chosen to motivate himself was by tormenting me. During the day, he buried himself in his books, dumping all the household chores on my shoulders, cleaning, cooking, everything. To make matters worse, he had let his adoptive mother hound and badger me constantly, and at night, it was even worse. Zhao Shuxing had grandly declared that he could not bear to waste a single moment of his precious time, ordering me to read aloud to him by his bedside all night long. I had read every single book on his shelves until my eyes were blurred with exhaustion. Meanwhile, he had snored loudly, already lost in his sweet dreams of becoming the top scholar. Now, that burden of virtuous dedication to her husband's studies had been passed on to my cousin. Then let the allure of wealth and status dazzle her even more. Yubaojai, the jewelry shop owned by my elder sister-in-law, was renowned for selling only the finest, most exquisite items that even the richest nobles in the capital could not buy. No matter how much money they offered, I deliberately picked out a set of one-of-a-kind jewelry as a gift for my cousin, sending her a message that our sisterly bond ran deep. I also announced that any of my cousin's friends would be given priority access to Yubaojai's most exclusive merchandise. First, let her taste the sweetness of victory. Then, let her fall from the highest peak, bide my time, build up my strength, and in the end, cut the weeds and dig up the roots, leaving no chance for a comeback. The business principles my elder sister-in-law had taught me should work just as well when applied to dealing with my cousin. I was tired of singing her praises. My cousin had been flattered and praised so much that she was already floating high above the clouds, completely oblivious to the danger lurking beneath her feet. Now, let us wait and see. If we do not touch her, do not move against her, will this rotten fruit not fall from the tree by itself? Second sister-in-law, you have a letter. Shen Suiji pouted, pretending to grumble that his second brother was always sending me gifts, but there was a mischievous glint in his eyes. Can I take a look? What wonderful thing did second brother send you this time? It's nothing special, just some trivial trinkets, I said, stepping sideways to tuck the wooden box behind my back, trying to avoid his curious gaze. That can't be true. Second brother is the best at picking gifts. Whenever he came back from the battlefield in the past, he would always bring me little souvenirs from the places he'd been. Shen Suiji protested. Who would have thought that now that he has you, second sister-in-law, I don't even get a single letter, let alone any trinkets. His words were filled with mock resentment, yet as he spoke, he took a few steps back, bowed politely, and then turned to leave. My dearest wife Wanyan, I hope this letter finds you well. Every letter began with the same words, yet they never failed to fill my heart with an indescribable sense of peace and security. Shen Siji's letters were never long, filled only with trivial little details about his daily life. In his writing, he bared his heart to me as if we were longtime lovers, not two people who had only met once, briefly, on our wedding night. Perhaps it was because his handwriting was so beautiful, sharp and bold, yet brimming with tender affection between the lines, that I could never bring myself to read his letters too quickly. I would whisper the words to myself 2 or 3 times before slowly putting the letter down and reaching for the small wooden box beside it. Inside was a piece of amber, no bigger than a fingernail, with a tiny red insect trapped within it, utterly adorable. Life in the Northwest was far from comfortable, and supplies were scarce, but that never stopped Shinsiji from sending me little gifts. There were delicate small daggers, distinctive leather crafts, unfamiliar Tibetan silver ornaments, and rare spices unique to the region. Shinsiji, and the entire loyal and brave Marquis's mansion, had given me a level of respect I had never known before, cherished, valued. My heart swelled with emotion, and my only wish was for his safety. But the battle situation in the Northwest was taking a turn for the worse. The enemy troops resorted to all sorts of delaying tactics, striking here and there at random, then retreating before our army could counterattack. Taking advantage of the natural barrier of the Wei River, they only harassed our forces, never engaging in a full-scale battle. My elder sister-in-law furiously rattled the abacus beads, so agitated that she almost snapped the beads and sent them flying in my face. Damn it all, if the court refuses to send us grain supplies, then we'll do it ourselves. The noble ladies your cousin brought around have bought out all the stock in Yubaojai. We have more than enough money to spare. She slammed her hand down on the table, pulled out the thickest account book, and slashed her brush across several pages with a decisive stroke. It was true, this dynasty valued civil officials over military officers, and the emperor was weak and cowardly, pursuing a policy of defense only, never taking the offensive, a war of attrition. As long as the border was defended, it did not matter whether the enemy was defeated or not. After all, the court was not providing any grain rations. Winning the war would be like finding a windfall, a profitable business with minimal risk. The emperor only cared about maintaining his unblemished reign, no matter the cost. It was the soldiers stationed at the border who suffered, enduring harsh weather, sleeping in the open, constantly on high alert, trapped in a seemingly endless war with no end in sight. Now, even their grain supplies were running dangerously low. The enemy's hit-and-run tactics made it impossible for our soldiers to set up camp and cook proper meals. Most of the time, they had to survive on dry rations alone. The autumn heat lingered on, and the weather was still swelteringly hot. My elder sister-in-law had plenty of money and grain, but she could not prevent the dry rations from spoiling during the long journey to the front lines. Use soybean oil instead of rapeseed oil. It will keep the food fresh for much longer, I suggested, stepping forward just as she was at her wit's end. If there was one thing I had gained from my past life, it was the countless nights I had spent reading by candlelight, nights that had filled my mind with all sorts of odd, seemingly useless bits of knowledge. Soybean oil had a strong, fishy smell, so very few noble families in the capital used it for cooking, but in the impoverished villages, the common people relied on it to preserve their food, for no other reason than that soybean oil had far better preservative properties than rapeseed oil. Are you sure? My elder sister-in-law asked, her eyes lighting up with hope. I'm absolutely sure. My elder sister-in-law only asked that one question before jumping to her feet and rushing off to arrange the production of the dry rations. Without looking back, transporting private grain supplies was outside the court's jurisdiction. For such a long journey to the Northwest, only trusted men from the Marquis's mansion could be entrusted with the mission. My mother-in-law was getting on in years, and my elder sister-in-law had her hands full managing the numerous businesses and affairs in the capital. Thus, the task of escorting the grain convoy fell to none other than Shinsueiji. At just 9 years old, it was the first time Shinsueiji had been given such an important mission. The excitement was written all over the young boy's face. Protect your second sister-in-law well, listen to her every word, and don't act impulsively. My mother-in-law repeatedly instructed him before his departure. In truth, my presence on the mission was secondary. I knew that my mother-in-law was simply looking for an excuse to let me go to the northwest to see Shin. Her son's departure for the battlefield on his wedding night had always been a source of guilt for her. She had always felt that she owed me an apology. After 2 lifetimes, this was the first time I had ever left the capital. To say that I felt a little anxious and uncertain would be an understatement. Everyone in the Marquis's mansion was reliable and capable, following the route carefully planned by my elder sister-in-law. Shin arranged everything along the way with perfect precision. I could not quite put my feelings into words. In my past life, living in the Zhao household, I had wasted my days slaving over the stove to cook for Zhao Shusheng, staying up late to keep him company while he studied, deluding myself into thinking I was leading a meaningful life. But in the Marquis's mansion, I truly felt that I was not doing enough. All I wanted was to work even harder, to contribute more. Second sister-in-law, I know you're eager to see second brother, but you must take care of yourself, Shin Sueji said gently. It was supposed to be him listening to my orders, yet this half-grown boy had been looking out for my emotional well-being the entire journey. We traveled during the day, and at night, I threw myself into researching ways to compress the military rations, staying so busy that I did not have a single moment to spare. The Marquis's mansion has treated me so well, I want to do something to help the soldiers too, I replied earnestly. To my surprise, Shin Sueji let out a soft laugh. You don't need to put so much pressure on yourself, second sister-in-law. Knowing second brother's personality, the more freely you act and the more you just be yourself, the happier he'll be. If you keep acting so hesitant and timid like this, I guarantee he'll walk all over you, walk all over me. This was the 3rd time I had heard such a thing. Beneath his silver armor, he had always looked so solemn and imposing. How could everyone in the Marquis's mansion describe him as such a rascal? You'll understand once you get to know second brother better, Shin Sueji said, raising an eyebrow with a mischievous grin. By the time we entered the northwest region, I had almost perfected my method of compressing military rations. I ground the rice and flour into fine powder, then mixed in large amounts of wine, vinegar, salt, and oil. This not only reduced the volume of the food but also ensured that it would not spoil easily, maximizing its shelf life. Shin Sueji took 2 bites of the compressed cake and exclaimed that it tasted delicious. Thanks to Zhao Shusheng's fussy adoptive mother, I had been forced to master the art of cooking in my past life. Now, being able to lend even this small, humble helping hand filled my heart with joy. It was a joy far greater than that of doing household chores or cooking a few meals. It was the kind of joy that came from feeling myself slowly integrating into the Marquis's mansion, a sense of unity, of working together toward a common goal. The final stretch of the grain transport had to be done at night. I also had to abandon the carriage to avoid being detected by the enemy troops. The temperature difference between day and night in the northwest was extreme. Walking through the wilderness under the moonlight, the harsh wind stung my face fiercely. I had known that conditions in the northwest were harsh, but I had never imagined they would be this terrible. Barren desert land, desolate and unyielding. We saw almost no one along the way, and the few scattered souls we did encounter were all gaunt and emaciated, their bodies wasted away by hunger and hardship. I did not want to delay the army, so I kept my head down, shielding my face from the wind, and walked mechanically, clinging tightly to the carriage shaft. We had been walking for about an hour when Shin Sueji spoke up. Second sister-in-law, why don't I arrange for a few men to stay with you while you rest here for a bit? No need, let's keep going, we need to hurry, I replied firmly. My steps were starting to feel unsteady. But the twinkling lights of the military camp ahead were growing brighter and brighter. For some reason, I suddenly felt an overwhelming desire to see Shin Sueji. I missed him even though we had only met once. second brother. My eyes were stinging from the blowing sand, but through the haze, I vaguely saw a figure riding a horse galloping toward us. The enemy has made a sudden move. Our army has broken camp overnight. The grain convoy must change its route immediately, Shinsiji announced. Flicking his horsewhip and pointing in another direction, true to the unspoken understanding between brothers, Shinsueiji understood his meaning instantly. But what about second sister-in-law? She comes with me. You take care of the grain supplies, Shinsiji ordered without hesitation. The events that followed were a blur in my memory. I vaguely remembered someone lifting me onto a horse, strong arms wrapping around my waist, holding me tightly against a broad chest, shielding me from the wind and cold. "General," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Yes," he replied. The wind howled loudly around us. Fearing that I would not hear him, Shinsiji leaned down, his lips brushing against my ear as he spoke. The situation was urgent, and I had no time to send word. "So I came to pick you up myself. I'll take you to my military tent in a moment. You've had a long, hard journey, my lady. Go rest first." A strange, fluttering sensation stirred in the depths of my heart, followed by a fleeting thought that slipped through my fingers before I could grasp it. "You're going to force a crossing of the Wei River," I blurted out suddenly. Shinsiji looked slightly surprised that I had guessed his plan, but he nodded anyway. "We can't afford to waste any time. The enemy seems to be preparing to withdraw. I've already ordered the troops to assemble. We'll cut off their retreat. This battle will put an end to this war once and for all." My mind raced, trying to recall the events of my past life. Victory was certain. Shinsiji's military strategy was brilliant and unshakable. "But, is Kanjun Center Yuan still by your side?" I asked anxiously. "He leaked military secrets." "He was imprisoned yesterday," Shinsiji replied flatly. "What secrets?" I pressed, my fingers tightening involuntarily around his arm. "General, you have to trust me. I just remembered something important. I stumbled over my words, overcome with urgency and panic. Time was running out, and I did not know how to explain myself clearly. I rambled on, telling him that cypress trees, locust trees, cottonwood trees, and sand willows were drought-resistant, easy to grow, and could help combat the sandstorms plaguing the region. The riverbank was scorched black by the fires of war, smoke and dust filling the air, turning the already gray and desolate land into a chaotic, apocalyptic scene. Our army marched northward for over 2,000 li, crossing Mount Liho, and dealt the enemy a series of devastating blows, completely stripping them of their control over the northwest region. The news of our victory spread quickly, boosting the morale of our troops. Meanwhile, the greenery we had planted along the way was beginning to take root and thrive. After delivering the last batch of dry rations, the soldiers stationed at the camp began busily preparing for the victory celebrations. The main army returned triumphant 3 days later. The area outside the military tents was already packed with people, all craning their necks, eagerly waiting for their return. I blended inconspicuously into the crowd, so tightly squeezed that I could barely stand upright. But as I looked up, my eyes met Shinsiji's, easily the most striking figure in the entire army. He rode at the front of the formation on a tall, powerful horse, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Ignoring the cheering crowds around him, amidst the thunderous applause and shouts of joy, the heroes returned home. Yet as Shinsiji passed by me, he suddenly reined in his horse. "My lady, come here," he said, extending his hand toward me, amidst the playful catcalls and laughter of the soldiers. I found myself reaching out to him as if in a daze, allowing him to pull me up onto his horse. Together, we rode back to his military tent. That evening, Shinsiji did not go anywhere. There were still countless matters to take care of outside the tent, but after giving a few casual orders, he sat down beside me and began to tell me about the battle. Center Yuan had betrayed the country. colluding with the enemy, using a strategy of feigned retreat. He had bribed the enemy to pretend to withdraw their troops, plotting to join forces with his own loyal soldiers from the inside to trap Shen Siji and his army in a deadly ambush. Thanks to your warning. I had been keeping a close eye on him the entire time, but I still let my guard down, never suspecting that the enemy had secretly doused the river surface with oil in advance. Shen Siji admitted with a frown. After leaving me that day, he had summoned his generals and soldiers overnight to rearrange their battle plans. He had deliberately set fire to the river first. Under the cover of the flames and smoke, his army had detoured around to the enemy's rear and launched a surprise attack, catching them completely off guard. This is the second time you've saved my life, Shen Siji said softly, his eyes filled with gratitude. The enemy had been soundly defeated, and he was safe and unharmed. It was all I could have asked for. That night, he did not leave. He stayed with me in the military tent. Overwhelmed by shyness, I stood rooted to the spot like a wooden stake, not knowing what to do with myself. Perhaps I should go stay with Aunt Wang, I stammered, trying to find an excuse to leave. Before I could finish my sentence, Shen Siji shook his head, cutting me off. Everyone else is celebrating their family reunions. You're my wife, what are you doing crashing their gathering? Besides, I'm the commander-in-chief of this army, after winning such a great victory. If my wife abandons me to spend the night alone, I'll be the laughingstock of the entire camp, he added with a playful grin. The military bed was extremely small. Shen Siji held me in his arms as we lay down to sleep, half of his body hanging off the edge of the bed. Yet despite the uncomfortable position, he soon drifted off to sleep, letting out soft snores. Yang Yang. Such an intimate nickname was rarely used among noble families. My face burned bright red with embarrassment. It did not take me long to understand what the people of the Marquis's mansion meant when they described Shen Siji as a free-spirited man. Under the pretense of teaching me how to ride a horse, he took me traveling all over the northwest. The vast Gobi deserts, towering mountains, and crystal-clear lakes were scenes of breathtaking natural beauty that I could never have imagined back in the capital. One day, I will drive the barbarians beyond the Yangshan mountains, making sure they never dare to invade our lands again, Shen Siji declared solemnly, his gaze fixed on the snow-capped mountains in the distance, their peaks glistening under the sun. I was still lost in the passion of his words when I suddenly felt a pair of strong arms wrap around my waist from behind. Where's your horse? I asked belatedly, startled by his sudden embrace. I sent it back, Shen Siji replied with a broad, mischievous smile. If I hadn't sent it away, how else would I have the chance to ride together with you? Yang Yang. I had long grown accustomed to his sudden displays of affection, yet I still felt my ears grow warm with shyness. We stayed in the military camp for over 10 more days, and the weather gradually turned cold, but something strange happened. One night, the regular supply of charcoal for heating suddenly stopped. Have we run out? But there was still plenty left this morning, I muttered to myself, rubbing my cold hands together. Cold? Shen Siji asked, a playful smirk spreading across his face. He took off his thick cloak and draped it over my shoulders. Is this better? His masculine scent wrapped around me, a unique fragrance that belonged only to him. Not only did I no longer feel cold, but my heart also began to burn with a warm, fluttering heat. General, aren't you cold? I asked, turning to look at him. I am cold, he admitted. From behind, he pulled me into his arms, burying his face in the crook of my neck. His warm breath tickled my ear as he spoke softly. Yang Yang, we are husband and wife now. Calling me general like this doesn't feel right anymore, don't you think? He spent the entire night pestering me on that tiny military bed, trying to get me to call him Brother Sai. I tugged at his lapels, playfully resisting, yet I was afraid that if I pulled too hard, I would push him off the edge of the narrow bed. In my flustered state, I bit down on his shoulder, leaving a faint tooth mark. "I knew you were bullying me. You're such a rascal. I bet you were the one who told them to take away the braziers last night." A smile tugged at the corners of Shinsiji's lips. He pulled me into his arms with one hand, while the other was slung casually behind his head like a pillow. "Then tell me, Yang Yang, why do you think I had the braziers removed?" "Why else?" The memory of curling up in his arms every morning to keep warm made the answer perfectly clear. The steady, strong beat of his heart thrummed against my chest. This man was such a scoundrel, slowly but surely drawing me deeper and deeper under his spell. A warm, gentle kiss landed on my forehead. After our playful bickering, Shinsiji rested his chin on top of my head, whether it was my imagination or not. His breathing seemed to grow a little heavier with the movement. "Yang Yang, this bed is too hard," he murmured softly. "Tomorrow, I'll give the order to return to the capital." Shinsiji assigned a small detachment of soldiers to accompany us, allowing us to head back to the capital ahead of the main army. The men had left looking like bright-eyed, spirited lads, but now they were all thinner, their skin tanned dark and roughened by the harsh northwest winds. Along the journey, I took the initiative to take charge of the meals, using whatever local ingredients I could find to whip up hearty, delicious dishes, determined to make sure they ate well on the way home. Second sister-in-law's cooking is absolutely divine. When I get married in the future, I'm definitely going to marry someone who can cook like you, one of the soldiers exclaimed, his mouth full of food. "I'll give you 2 chefs, then you won't need to get married at all," Shinsiji replied flatly, his face giving nothing away as he continued eating his meal. The next day, his third brother was nowhere to be seen. "I sent him back to the military camp," Shinsiji explained when I asked. "There's still plenty of work to be done there. It'll be good for him to gain some more experience." "But he's your little brother," I protested. "So what?" Shinsiji shrugged, finishing off the last bite of his rice nonchalantly. "I'm a selfish man. I like to keep all the good things to myself." As we drew near the capital's outskirts, a familiar feeling of nervousness washed over me, anxious anticipation mixed with a touch of shyness at returning home. I bent down, carefully shaving the stubble off Shinsiji's jaw with a razor, but his hands grew increasingly mischievous, wandering slowly from my waist to my back. "Stop messing around," I chided him softly. "We have to go into the palace to meet the emperor tomorrow. You need to look neat and tidy. You're disgusted by me," he teased, clicking his tongue. He crossed his arms over his chest, leaning back to look at me with a lazy, amused grin. "You prefer pretty boys, don't you, fancy useless fellows like Zhao Shusheng?" What are you talking about?" I spluttered, caught off guard by his sudden question. I had been gone from the capital for months, and I had almost forgotten all about my cousin and Zhao Shusheng. But now that Shinsiji had mentioned him, a warning bell went off in my head. The imperial examinations were only a few months away, weren't they? When I fell silent, Shinsiji narrowed his dark, ink-black eyes, rubbing his now smooth chin with a pout. "Yang Yang, I wasn't this dark before. It's the scorching sun in the northwest that tanned me so badly. Give me some time to recover back at the mansion, and I'll turn white again," he said, his tone uncharacteristically whiny. I was stunned into silence. I never thought I would hear such a childish, pitiful tone from Shinsiji of all people. When I saw him open his mouth to say more, I quickly covered his lips with my hand to shut him up. "Will you stop talking nonsense? What do I have to do with Zhao Shusheng? If you keep acting like this, elder sister-in-law will definitely laugh at me when we get back." Annoyed, I bit down lightly on his shoulder again. This big, arrogant rascal, he had made me completely forget what a majestic, awe-inspiring general he was on the battlefield. Shinsiji went into the palace to meet the emperor, personally dropping me off at the gate of the Marquis's mansion before riding off slowly on his horse. "Our second young master is so lovesick, he can't even bear to be apart from you for a moment," my elder sister-in-law teased. nudging me playfully with her elbow, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Elder sister-in-law," I muttered, my cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "Ah, don't try to act coy with me. I'm not your fiancé. I won't fall for that soft, sweet act," she said, waving her hand dismissively and stepping back several paces. "But your husband and his elder brother are exactly the same. Once they set their hearts on someone, they can't hide their feelings at all. Just you wait, you two have so many happy days ahead of you." I had barely stepped through the mansion's front gate when I heard that my cousin had come to visit. I was still wearing my plain, coarse linen traveling clothes, but she had pushed past the servants who tried to stop her and rushed straight over to me. "I heard you went to the front lines too, little sister. I've been so worried about you," she said, her voice oozing false concern, but her eyes were filled with undisguised sarcasm as she looked me up and down, lingering on my shabby clothes with disdain. She even pulled out a silk handkerchief to cover her nose, as if my presence offended her. General Shun returned victorious from the war. He must have received countless rewards and honors from the emperor. Don't say your elder sister didn't warn you. That man is already ruined. If you're smart, you should start saving up some silver now. After all, you have a long life ahead of you. She held out her hand in front of me, palm up. "If you have trouble getting your money out of the mansion, you can leave it with me. We're family. I'll be happy to keep it safe for you." I shook my head. Letting out a sharp, mocking laugh, I looked at her sunken eyes, the dark circles under them so heavy that even several layers of thick powder could not hide her exhaustion. It seemed that she had worn herself ragged, slaving away over cooking and studying for Zhao Shusheng, still naively believing that Shen Siji had returned from the war half-crippled, just like he had in my past life. Has elder sister come to borrow money from the Marquis's mansion? Are you running out of silver to curry favor with those noble families? I asked coolly. My cousin's face froze, turning an ugly shade of red with rage and humiliation. Zhao Shusheng's adoptive mother was a peasant woman, but she was surprisingly shrewd and calculating. She did not care how much the noble families looked down on her. She had an unshakable confidence and was determined to worm her way into high society at any cost. But these families had been wealthy and influential for generations. They would never accept the Zhao family so easily. To make matters worse, my relentless praise of my cousin's virtue and dedication had started to backfire spectacularly. She had no way out. She had to keep pushing forward, no matter how hard it was. Thanks to my little push, the standards of those noble ladies had skyrocketed. They would only accept jewelry and accessories from Yubaojai, which had added a huge financial burden to my cousin's already strained budget. She had been forced to dip into her dowry, spending it like water to buy expensive gifts to bribe and flatter her way into those elite circles. My cousin was a woman who had lived 2 lifetimes. She was convinced that Zhao Shusheng would top the imperial examinations and change their fate, so she was more than willing to spend every last penny to make that happen. I had heard that she returned to her maiden home every month, begging my legal mother for more money. She had sacrificed everything to become the wife of the top scholar. Little did she know that money was nothing but an external possession. As long as she was willing to keep spending, she alone could secure Zhao Shusheng's position as the top scholar. Of course, I had no intention of telling her that little secret, at least not yet. Your brother-in-law is destined to be the top scholar. If you know what's good for you, you'll hand over your silver to me to use for his career. Otherwise, you'll end up losing both your husband's family and your own, she threatened, her voice sharp with malice. Using the Marquis's mansion's silver to fund the Zhao family's political ambitions. I'm afraid I don't understand the logic behind that, I replied coldly. Don't you dare use the Marquis's mansion to intimidate me. My cousin hissed, her eyes filled with contempt. She leaned in close, whispering maliciously in my ear. I'll tell you a little secret, little sister. After months of fighting on the battlefield, Shen Siji has been completely ruined. He's not even a man anymore. I raised my hand and slapped her hard across the face. The force of the blow made her spin half around in place. After all this time, you still can't keep that filthy mouth of yours shut. Spreading such vicious lies about other people's private lives. Do you want me to go tell Lady Zhao all about your happy married life with Zhao Shusheng? You, she shrieked, clutching her stinging cheek, her face turning bright red with rage, unable to utter another word. She had come here, acting so righteous and indignant, trying to taunt me, as if she and Zhao Shusheng were living a life of perfect happiness. But the truth was, Zhao Shusheng had never consummated their marriage. The entire Zhao family was controlled by Lady Zhao. My cousin had no say in anything at all. You'll end up a lonely widow for the rest of your life. My cousin screamed at the top of her lungs, her voice shrill and hysterical. I won't, but you will, I retorted calmly. But as I turned to leave, I froze at the sight of Shen Siji standing there, his face twisted into a strange, unreadable expression, completely ruined, not even a man anymore, a lonely widow. He repeated slowly, his voice low and dangerous. He was still wearing his imperial court robes. He strode over to me, lifted me up easily, and carried me into the nearest room, slamming the door shut behind us before firing off one question after another in rapid succession. Shouldn't you go see Mother first now that you're back home? I stammered, trying to change the subject. No need, he replied firmly. His eyes bore into mine, intense and piercing, as if he was trying to see straight through to my soul. First, we need to resolve this matter of my dignity. Su Wanyue was the one who said those things, not me. Why are you taking it out on me? I whined, covering my face with my hands, wishing I could dig a hole in the ground and disappear forever. Look at the mess my cousin had gotten me into. In my past life, Shen Siji had returned from the war with a crippled leg, and well, he had probably been injured in other, more private places too. It was likely that he had never consummated his marriage with my cousin before his death. But this was a different life, a different time. How could she possibly compare the two situations? My strange, flustered expression only seemed to make Shen Siji angrier. Yang, I'm asking you a question. Ever since you married into the Marquis's mansion, how have we treated you? He demanded, his voice tight with emotion. I bit my lip, thinking carefully before answering. Mother has been wonderful to me. She taught me everything I need to know about managing the household. Elder sister-in-law has taken great care of me too. She taught me how to keep accounts and how to build connections with people. And your third brother has been very respectful. I learned how to shoot arrows from him. A long, heavy silence fell between us. It seemed that Shen Siji had been waiting for more, but when no further words came from me, the corners of his mouth turned downward in a deep frown. You talked about everyone else, but you didn't mention me even once, he said quietly, his voice laced with hurt and disappointment. His hand tightened around my waist, pulling me even closer to him until I was sitting on his lap. You've been very good to me, I stammered, my heart racing. You respect me, you value me, you've given me all the respect and dignity I could ever ask for in this mansion. Shen Siji raised an eyebrow, his expression clearly saying, is that all? I was wrong. I should have been the one to say this first, he said suddenly, his voice softening, his gaze filled with a tenderness that made my heart skip a beat. I investigated. Senator Yuan did not abandon his wife. I also realized that when you mentioned it that day, you were actually hinting to me that I should not take any concubines either. I promise you now, for the rest of my life, it will only be you. Is that all right with you? My mouth fell open in shock. What had he misunderstood? That had been a complete lie I had made up on our wedding day, just to make Shen Siji wary of Senator Yuan. How had it gotten twisted into a request for him not to take concubines? Wait a minute, what had he just said? For the rest of his life, it would only be me. Yang, the trees you planted in the northwest have already sprouted new leaves. It's time for us to plant our own tree together, he murmured, his thumb brushing gently across my cheek. I love you. I hope we can share a lifetime of mutual affection and happiness. There were no more flowery words, no grand declarations. Shinsiji was a man of action, just like in battle. He believed in proving his words with deeds. He was so utterly, completely a man. I was never going to end up a lonely widow like my cousin. I had thought that marrying into the loyal and brave Marquis's mansion, gaining the care and support of my mother-in-law and elder sister-in-law, and earning the respect of my husband was already more than I could ever hope for. I had never dared to dream that I could have something more, something like this. What happened to General Center in the end? Ouch, why are you pinching me? After we had given in to our desires, Shinsiji pulled me close to his chest, pinching the soft flesh of my waist lightly, over and over again, pretending to be annoyed. Why are you talking about another man at a time like this? He grumbled, burying his face in the crook of my neck. The same decisiveness and resolve he showed on the battlefield was reflected in his approach to love, possessive, passionate, and unyielding. I'm talking about something important, I protested, propping myself up and pressing a soft kiss to his cheek. Sure enough, his anger faded as quickly as it had come. I remembered that Zhao Shuxing and Center Yuan had been close allies in my past life, one in civil service, the other in the military. They had colluded together, gradually seizing control of the imperial court. His in custody, for treason and colluding with the enemy. He will be executed soon, Shinsiji replied flatly. He told me that although he had been richly rewarded for his victory in the war, he had taken the initiative to hand over his military power to the emperor. He was the one who had fought to reclaim the northwest. While the northern border had always been guarded by the Marquis of loyalty and bravery and the heir apparent, the imperial power needed checks and